Continuing on from where we left off last time, we're now going to look at the second constitutional settlement. So the key questions to make notes on are, number 1, what circumstances brought about the second settlement? Number 2, what was the significance of Augustus's PROCONSULAR IMPERIUM Maius? Number 3, what was the significance of Augustus's Tribunicia Potestas? And number 4, how did his successors gain these powers? So just a little bit of background to explain why the second settlement came about. So from 27 to 24 BC, Augustus went on a tour of the provinces of Spain and Gaul. And then the following year, in 23 BC, there was a conspiracy against him. It probably involved two men called Marina and Caepio, and it showed that not everyone was happy with Augustus's rule. So in particular, the consuls were really resentful about his continued consulship, so these limited their ambitions. Augustus always ended up taking one spot, and the other consul was recommended to the people by Augustus. Afterwards, he became very ill and he nearly died, but he didn't give any indication of his last wishes. Agrippa was given his signet ring, but other than that we don't really know. So when he recovered, he changed how he ran the state and his involvement as consul. So he wanted a more subtle way to exert power over the state, and he therefore resigned from the consulship in July of 23 BC. However, now this meant that he only had the imperium of a proconsul, and this automatically ended when you crossed the pomerium, or the sacred boundary, into Rome. So his whatever power he had was outside Rome, not within it. So in response to this, the Senate granted him what's called Imperium Proconsulare Maius, and the word Maius is really important. It means greater, so it basically overrode that of any provincial governor. So he was able to step in and take over if it was required. He was also given the right to keep his imperium even within Rome. An imperium allowed you to command an army and be the supreme commander. So this power was meant to stop at the border or the city walls, but he was allowed to keep his. And later on in 19 BC it was extended for life. The second aspect of the powers he was granted was the power of a tribune. And so losing the consulship meant that he needed a way to control the civil side of the government at Rome. So he was able to control things outside Rome, but he needed some sort of power to control things within the city. So he accepted a grant of Tribunicia Potestas, which means the power of a tribune. And by that I mean a tribune of the plebs. So although he had been born a plebeian, when he was adopted by Julius Caesar, Augustus became a patrician, and this meant that he was not able to stand for election as a tribune. However, he now had the power of the tribune thanks to this special allocation by the Senate. So this meant he could bring proposals in front of the Assembly and the Senate, and he also kept his role as princeps senatus, so he was still the most important person in the Senate. He was able to veto all other magistrates, and he could force citizens to obey his orders. But all these things he didn't necessarily need to use, because his auctoritas was so great that he could usually get other people to propose things that he wanted done. And so generally when proposals were brought before the Senate by someone else, they were his idea or approved by him. But it had really, really good propaganda value, so it made him look like the champion of the people. By this I mean that the tribunes traditionally had been the protectors of the ordinary citizens from the nobility. So they didn't have any special symbols of office, like the toga praetexta with a purple border, the lictors or bodyguards with their fasces. So it was a really good way to keep the people on his side. And he used the annual renewal of his tribunician powers to measure the length of his reign, so he really emphasizes this part of his power. However, he wasn't able to leave these powers to his successors in his will, and so he needed to share the authority that he had with them before he died. So as we'll see, over time he persuaded the Senate to give these honours to those whom he wanted without actually limiting his own power, so he didn't have to kind of share it, it sort of expanded. And so by sharing his powers with Agrippa and then Tiberius, he ensured that they would have the authority to keep ruling Rome after he died. So just double check the key questions. So the circumstances bringing about or causing the second settlement. PROCONSULAR IMPERIUM Maios, what does it mean? Why is it important? And the same for Tribunicia Potestas. And finally, how did his successors gain these powers? Make sure you note down anything you find tricky and we'll discuss it in class.